Everybody to 52 Living Ideas and Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. We are going through CJ's book, and today's topic is Mystique. It's a really mysterious title for a chapter. So the format is we're going to talk about what we got from the essay first, and then we're going to have a series of presentations. As the number of people is quite small, we will do it in a fairly interactive way. So let's get started. Who would like to talk about what they thought of the essay? Go ahead and type an exclamation mark in chat or raise your hand in Zoom. We'll start with Caleb. Caleb, go ahead.
Evening again, everyone. Yeah, I really enjoyed the essay. Personally, I found it a good reminder of the value, the utility that errors and mistakes have. Personally, because I tend to be the kind of person that I'm afraid to make mistakes often. And I overthink the implications of the mistakes that I could make. So I either, don't take action, which in a lot of ways is worse, or, I don't fully commit to the action I'd like to take as a hedge. Uh, but, again, I feel like it's one of those ideas that when you read it or when you hear it, it seems implicit, it makes perfect sense, but, in practice, it's not always easy to, act on those ideas. Um, so yeah, that was the first really big takeaway for me, just a good reminder for my own life. The second was thinking about the importance of attention when it comes to mistakes and the errors that we make. Uh, Too often, and I mean, we've all had, a personal situation, I'm sure, where, we've dealt with someone in our lives at some point that, we see making a certain mistake and it seems very clear to us, but to them, they may not understand why perhaps things aren't going the way they'd like to, and they'll question themselves. They'll ask, why does this keep happening? But they at the time they don't realize that it's likely something, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a mistake that they're making, but a lesson that they haven't learned. And I feel like oftentimes it's because the correct amount of attention isn't paid, or their attention isn't aimed in the right direction. uh so along with the necessity of making mistakes, I think the corollary for that is uh the proper attentiveness to to your life and to the outcomes of your actions, so that when you do make those mistakes, you're actually aware of the fact that you are making a mistake, so that you can then take the required corrective action.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Caleb. Next up is going to be Maritza.
Hi. So from this essay, I love the message of how important it is for us to embrace our mistakes. Uh, and for me personally, it strikes a slightly different chord today than I actually did think it was going to have. I've been dealing with a horrible mess at work on there's all kinds of mistakes, and it's like a hot potato of who gets the blame. And what's being missed is that nobody is asking what can we do to avoid this in the future, right? There's no checks. So it's stark. It kind of, I feel like it's shining brightly in my face of what not to do. So, CJ emphasizes to us that it's important to recognize and embrace our mistakes as a fundamental part of our learning process. I think that is like so eloquently beautiful. And we live in a world that does not always allow us the room for that, especially those of us who are in the corporate world. We're we have made the decision to, walk with, you know, the corporate folks, and there's not a lot of room for patience with mistakes. And CJ is saying to us that mistakes provide a critical feedback that can guide us in our understanding and our actions towards more effective outcomes. To me, this is something that doesn't matter whether you're looking at it from a perspective of some stale job in a corporation or an artistic endeavor upon which you're embarking for your own personal pleasure. If you make a mistake in either of those realms or any realm in between and around those two separate points, if you can use that mistake as a feedback mechanism, then it's going to guide you towards different actions in the future with improved depth of understanding. So, it's the idea of, and what he's bringing here to us is mistakes are yet another way to embrace a continuous learning perspective. So, if we have picked up the banner of budding comprehensivists, we are striving to walk forward learning. We're always querying. And what he's saying in this essay is that, yes, even your mistakes, even something that is a horrible error that is glaringly obvious to you now in hindsight, that is not something to be embarrassed or ashamed of. It is something to look at carefully and find what you can use so that you can do something differently as you move forward. And I think that is we don't quite live in a world that highlights that enough. So it's just a really good reminder for us. And he highlights this almost as a philosophy. So mystique, the idea of embracing one's mistakes is almost necessary for us to highlight and live a philosophy where learning is not just about acquiring information. Learning for us should be about understanding and understanding our limitations and using them allows us to build this foundation for deeper inquiry and development. And so that's what I my major things I get out of this essay. Thank you.
Thank you, Maritza. Um, as there are not that many people here, what I was thinking of doing is that it may be worth just going through the essay paragraph by paragraph. Just read one paragraph, see if somebody has comments, go to the next paragraph. Shall we do that? Okay.
This essay refers to another essay, and that essay is by Bucky Fuller, but I didn't pull it out. So
okay, that's fine. So let's just go with this essay and let's go through it. Maritza, can you go ahead and share the screen and start reading this paragraph? Just once you've done one paragraph, let's ask people if they have any comments on it.
Yes. Excuse me. Yes. Let me share the screen here. Are we starting from the top here, or do you want to start from the value of mystique?
No, we'll start from the top, and maybe we'll go section by section. How many sections? Can you just go ahead and scroll down? So got value of this one, role of ignorance, keep going, theory of learning, comprehensivity.
So
okay,
3.
All right, so we'll do 3. So three piece, we'll go first one, and then just one by one, the entire section we'll go.
Right. So I'll start us off by reading the opener and then the value of mystique.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Certainly. Comprehensivity is our inclination to integrate all of our sources of learning so as to better comprehend the world and how it works. To effectively guide our newfound comprehensivity, we require newfound epistemic virtues, new criteria for good knowledge. In previous resources, we have explored 2 such proposed epistemic virtues, the inductive attitude and the method of multiple working hypotheses. This resource will investigate mystique as a third proposed epistemic virtue for our comprehensivity. Our primary guide for this exploration is R. Buckminster Fuller's essay, Mistake, Mystique. It was published in the now defunct periodical East/West Journal. You can find a copy in the anthologies, including Your Private Sky, Discourse, Buckminster Fuller, edited by Joachim Kraus and Claude Lichtenstein, 2001, and Education Automation Comprehensive Learning for Emergent Humanity, published by Lars Müller Publishers, 2010. We will also consider some ideas of Stuart Firestein from the 2012 book Ignorance, How It Drives Science. The value of mistake, mystique. In the Buckminster Fuller essay, Mistake, Mystique, first published in 1977, Bucky, as he is affectionately known, entreats us to adopt the inductive attitude, the discipline of effectively adapting our thinking to our experience. From my viewpoint, by far the greatest challenge facing the young people today is that of responding and conforming only to their own most delicately insistent intuitive awareness of what the truth seems to them to be as based on their own experiences and not on what others have interpreted to be the truth regarding events of which neither they nor others have experience-based knowledge. Buckminster Fuller. Bucky goes on to warn us against unthinkingly joining fads and other in movements, crowd psychology, or group tendencies that might usurp our individual attention to the truth of our experiences and thwart us from adapting our understandings to our experiences. By highlighting the value of an individual's experience and their intuitive ability to make sense of it, Bucky emphasizes the importance of diversity in forming our collective understandings of the world. Comprehensivism is as the emerging practice for coming to understand our worlds ever more broadly and deeply embraces the many different perspectives on offer from the world's many traditions of inquiry and action, our many cultural zones, our ethnosphere, and the communications of each individual's experiences. By degrees, these learnings percolate through society to become our collective wisdom. It is therefore vitally important to realize that your unique interpretations of your experiences are essential in forming our collective intelligence. Bucky explains why the inductive attitude is necessary. By cosmic designing wisdom, we are all born naked, helpless for months, and though superbly equipped cerebrally, utterly lacking in experience, ergo utterly ignorant. Buckminster Fuller. This quote is reminiscent of Bucky's explanation in Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth that we only have our intellects and our experience with which to learn how the world works. That was the great lesson from Bucky's realization that the outstandingly important fact regarding Spaceship Earth is that no instruction book came with it. How can we apply our intellects to learn from experience? Whatever humans have learned had to be learned as a consequence only of trial and error experience. Humans have learned only through mistakes. It is only at the moment of humans' realistic admission to selves of having made a mistake that they are closest to that mysterious integrity governing the universe. Only then are humans able to free themselves of the misconceptions that have brought about their mistakes. With the misconceptions out of the way, they have their first view of the truth and immediately subsequent insights into the significance of the misconception as usually fostered by their pride and vanity, or by unthinking popular accord. Buckminster Fuller. It is true that we cannot learn, or I'm sorry, is it true that we cannot learn except through mistake making? Yes, I think so. Otherwise, we would be either phenomenally lucky or gods who can bypass any errors in concept, interpretation, or practice. Everyone I know is a mistake maker, just like me, not a god. With Bucky's help, we suddenly realize that all our knowledge is the collective result of our mistake making. That means that all humanity's great traditions of inquiry and action, all of the practices, rituals, and beliefs that comprise our ethnosphere, our cultural zones, as well as each individual's communicated experiences, are each a towering edifice of learned only from mistakes. Experience one, know what, know why, know how. In Mystique, Bucky presents the wonderful vision of learning as a practice of ever more refined course corrections, informed by the ongoing realizations, acknowledgments, and adjustments of our mistake making. In short, our mistakes provide the essential feedback to guide our knowing and actions to ever more effective results. Mystique is our profound sense that mistake making is the crux, the most important part of our learning. It is a vital epistemic virtue for our comprehensivity because it puts us in direct contact with how we create knowledge at an elemental level. We can begin to see how our mystique can inform our collective intelligence. Your experiences and your mistake making, effectively curated and shared, provide inputs for others to refine their understanding. Gradually, a community of people attentively tuned to mystique can develop ever more refined and comprehensively considered learning. Mystique is, therefore, an important epistemic virtue for our comprehensivity, our wanting to understand all and put everything together, as Bucky put it in his book, Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. So, we should heed the grand moral injunction from Bucky's book, Synergetics, to guide us towards more effective mystique. Dare to be naive. What do you think? Is mystique as the dynamic process of attentively identifying and correcting our mistakes an important epistemic virtue to guide our learning and our lives?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I really like the idea of reading these essays because CJ does such a fantastic job of phrasing the questions, phrasing the issues. So would love to hear your thoughts, your answer to the final question. Maritza, can you read the final question one more time?
Yes. What do you think? Is mystique as the dynamic process of attentively identifying and correcting our mistakes an important epistemic virtue to guide our learning and our lives?
Excellent. Would love to hear what everybody thinks. We'll start with Caleb. Caleb, go ahead. Oh, just a second. I have to unmute everybody. Hold on. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Caleb.
Thank you. I mean, my answer to the question, I suppose, is a resounding yes. Between that and the beginning of the last quote in this section, where he says, "It is only at the moment of humans' realistic admission to selves of having made a mistake that they are closest to that mysterious integrity governing the universe." I think that line right there, and then the last one in that section where he poses the question, that's what informed my the idea that I had as far as attention being an important mediator in the process. And he says it, in that last line, the dynamic process of attentively, that being, I think, the key word. You're not able to derive the value, or if you can't maximize the value derived from the mistakes made unless you have that moment of admission to yourself that a mistake has been made. And, that part isn't, possible without the attention given to your actions to realize that, okay, this is the direction that I'm trying to head in. This is the goal that I'm trying to achieve. I'm a little off of that mark, and this is why. Without attention, you don't have that insight. You can't glean that insight.
Thank you, Caleb. Great observations. Let's go with Jeannie, Maritza, and Shrikant. Jeannie.
Oh, I'm not muted. Oh, well, I mean, I have to say I have a little problem with the experience thing. And I guess it works if you really, really stretch it. Now, CJ was a first child, and he ran into all these kinds of things that everything he did was a mistake almost. And he got a lot of flack for it from both parents. Me, on the other hand, I had two older siblings and one younger who was a problem child, very belligerent and, disobedient. So all I had to do was look at the other three. I didn't have to make those mistakes myself. I just watched. And so the attentiveness itself can be a help to avoiding mistakes. I don't know. I just feel like, did I miss something by not getting in trouble? I don't know. I don't think so.
Excellent observation. Thank you, Jeannie. Because it's mistakes, but not all mistakes have to be your mistakes. They're mistakes, but could be you can learn from other people's mistakes. That's the most inexpensive way of learning. Unfortunately, most of us are too, hard-headed to learn from others without banging their heads, and certainly the case in my case. Maritza, go ahead.
Oh, I'm delighted to go after that comment. Thank you, Jeannie. So, as also not being the firstborn and having so many mistakes of others with which to cull and decide which ones I'm going to emulate and which I will avoid, I hear that. So I hear CJ saying that, you know, um, he's asking if it's part of identifying and correcting our mistakes. I would say a resounding yes, but with the caveat that I believe when he says our mistakes, he literally means our. He doesn't mean for me to answer the question from the perspective of, is the process an epistemic virtue for me to identify and correct my mistakes? He means for we, the collective we. He's looking at this, to my understanding, the perspective here is ever one from the viewpoint of the budding comprehensivist. And as a budding comprehensivist, I would be seeking to, like Steve, like you said, Shrikant, the idea of, the mistakes that we're going to learn from most cheaply are those that others have made. So the cost to us may be negligible because it's a matter of, oops, sidestepping that there, Crater. as opposed to falling into the crater and having to crawl out, maybe. But it's that word attentively, identifying. If I've identified that Jeannie walked this path in front of me, fell into a crater, and it took her 2 days to crawl out of that crater, and she looked the rougher for it, if I can see that and identify it, instead of just whistling and, oh, Jeannie took this path, and then I fall into the crater also, because I will get the same lesson, right? Stay away from craters. But if I can get that lesson by seeing what Jeannie did and then just sidestep in the crater, then I'm the better off for it at a less cost. So I think that's the beauty of the twofold. It's the attentively identifying. So as comprehensivists, we've already accepted that we believe we are stronger learners, stronger, faster learners when we do so together. And that's our axiomatic foundation upon which we're building. So when we're asked if we think this is an epistemic virtue for guiding us on our learning track, we're considering it with that axiom already firmly in place, at least to my thinking. And so that's why I don't have any issues with the concept of saying, yeah, I don't want to fall into that crater too, just to learn that I should avoid it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. This is really interesting conversation. So I'm thinking about it in several ways. One is, actually, this is very unusual. Like most people, they hate mistakes. Their immediate reaction is, oh, I hate mistakes. And then they also, I think most people, for them to admit that they have made a mistake, that is to actually admit that you screwed up. There is something that is wrong in your thought. And it is kind of, it's painful. Many people want to just kind of paper it over, and then it's just, and there are many ways of doing it. Sometimes it is through saying, having rationalizations, right? I mean, it's not like you're saying, no, this is a mistake because I did that. And it's not really that. It is actually a way for you not to admit to the true mistake. And you're just putting something in place of it. So psychologically, I think it is this is, it is hard to own up to your mistakes. And the deeper the mistake, the more you are actually, it is core part of your operation itself. So we can talk about mistakes like saying, oh, I thought it was this much and it is this much, something like that, which is about outside things. The deeper mistakes are things about how you are operating and what is that doing to you and to other people. And to kind of admit to that is harder. So it's like there is a hierarchy of things. So firstly, what kind of a thing is this? This approach to mistakes is clearly epistemic virtue. Is how to, it's a process virtue. It's a part of process. It's not about a particular mistake. It's not about a particular content. It is your approach, your method itself. And what is it based on? It is based on the fact that reality is what it is. It just is. And you have to have your loyalty to truth, loyalty to reality as a base. And then say that I'm going to try to understand it, and I'm going to act based on my understanding. But I have to accept feedback from reality to correct myself, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to learn. If I hold on to things, and that is the human predilection. As animals, we have lots of automatized process, And we want to continue doing the automatized process. And we are not immediately aware of what that automatized way of doing, habituated way of doing things is doing to us or to others. So if you first, I'm just talking in terms of an individual, but actually the same thing works. Actually, it works on a much larger scale. When you look at, it's actually, that's not the right way of putting it. I think the right way of putting it is that, we are individual and we are social at the same time. So all of these issues apply both at the individual level and social level. So I was really intrigued by Jeannie's comment about not being the first, of CJ being the firstborn and she not, and then Maritza saying that, okay, I was also not. Now for what this worth, I am firstborn, and it does put you in a different situation. And you kind of have to figure out everything yourself, because adults are at a completely different level of operation, where if you have kids around your age, you have a much more way of getting feedback. But in another very real sense, we learn from civilization. We have tremendous debt to civilization and history. Okay, so actually, it's not just your family, it is everybody else. And if you take the view that I'm going to learn everything by myself, you're actually cutting yourself off from a lot of data. And being a comprehensivist requires that you not only look at everybody in your family, but look at the entire family of mankind and say, okay, what have people done over time and what has worked? And that is a part of taking in all the traditions and using that. So I think, and the point that Caleb brought in was a heart of the point. It's attention. It is paying attention to mistakes, even when it is painful. It is focusing on things which are saying, oh, this did not work. And why did this not work? Keeping your attention on those things, not just reacting to things, like positive feedback, but negative feedback is a crucial part. There is a tendency in modern, like now it is kind of subjectivism. Just go with your emotions. Just go for, the positive. But this is all about using the negative feedback loop. And the negative feedback loop, I would say, is more fundamental because it is necessary. We are prone to make mistakes, not just individually, but as a group. And, so I think this topic is a very, very deep topic. So I'm just delighted to be going through this essay point by point. So Caleb, go ahead.
To cast my ballot as far as where I fall in the sibling hierarchy, I'm also a second-born, not a firstborn. And I think, I really, I think it was a great point that Jeannie raised, because there's my sister and I, and then I have two other sets of cousins. We're all, pairs, one older, one younger. And when I think back, on the times that, we spent together growing up, the firstborns were all, very similar in their demeanor, and a lot of the things that they did, they were the trailblazers, so to speak, for us being the younger ones. They made the mistakes and afforded us the opportunity to then learn from them, not do the same things that they did. But I think there's an advantage that the younger sibling tends to have, again, provided they're paying attention. But there's also utility, and I think in being the firstborn, uh, Shrikant, I think you made an excellent point as far as, when you're the firstborn, you essentially not have no choice but to make mistakes, but there's a greater likelihood that you're going to make more mistakes compared to, being a secondborn, because you have no peers, that are experiencing that are having similar life experiences to you to then glean knowledge from. Your adults are on a totally different level. Their capabilities, their level of sophistication, it's all just far beyond anything that you may even be able to comprehend, wrap your mind around. And I think the idea of risk and reward, in finance, when we talk about, market performance, generally speaking, the more risk you're willing to take, the greater the reward, you may be able to have. But of course, that greater risk means, the losses could be, a lot bigger and a lot more painful. But when we think about the utility of mistake making as part of the learning process, I think there's some utility in being that firstborn and essentially being forced in a position where you have to take risks. There's, I think, a lot of utility in being able and willing to take risks. When I think about, how my sibling experience relates, what it's been for me, I'm much less, when I look at my older siblings, I'm much less willing to take risk. I'm much more risk averse than they are. And I think there are many instances in my own life where, it's not hurt me painfully, but I've missed out on things, on opportunities that, would have been good for me that I could have really capitalized on. And I can look at that kind of as a mistake. It's a mistake not to take, not to appropriately take risk. You calculate as best you can, but you take a chance. So I do think there's, advantage on one hand, but I think there's certainly utility in being in a position where, you have no choice but to take risk, because that's yet again, something that you can learn from. You can integrate that into your process.
Excellent point. I just want to complicate matters a little bit more about this firstborn and secondborn, because it really depends on whether you use that experience or not, and how you approach those things. I have really good friends, and they have these um, two kids, two boys who are very, very different from each other. The elder one is the thoughtful one, very deliberative, will think through everything in doing things. Whereas the younger one is very impulsive. It's like he saw people jumping out of the parachute, shouting Jaraman, what do you say? Geronimo. And then he would do that from the back of the pickup truck on stones, and he would get hurt, and he would just wipe himself off and go on. So he's very impulsive kind of a person, though he's second born. My favorite story was, I remember the elder one being, standing in the tree house, which wasn't that tall. Okay. And his father telling him, hey, jump. There's no problem. Your younger brother would do that. And his response was, yes, he would do that, and he would get hurt. So it's like he's the one who's learning from the young. So it's the question of paying attention and thinking about it, as well, as opposed to kind of emotional reaction. At the same time, the younger one, the risk taking, he is able to take that risk. He's psychologically okay with taking the risks, and he will learn in his own way by banging his head against the wall. So each of them have their own way of doing things. And so this is really great conversation. Next up is Mike. Mike, what do you think? What did you get from this first part of the essay?
I'll add one more thing that I also am a firstborn, but a couple things that go on. The world wasn't empty when I got here. So I wasn't, and so while I was a firstborn, there was a lot of people that were born before me. So another dimension that goes beyond this is one of the, in terms of problem solving abilities, one of your missions as a firstborn is you have to train your parents and how to react to these situations. And so you get some really, really good experience in problem solving. And also, for a time, you're the only child. So when the lamp gets broken, they know who to blame it on. When you got 5 kids, siblings, there's a different kind of due process because they don't know who to blame it on. And so that's another complication. You learn how to deal with those scenarios, and that gives you a unique atmosphere of problem solving. But in terms of the 10 generations that preceded you, you're not really the firstborn. There's a lot of legacy in there that you have to deal with, and that gives you both advantages and disadvantages in becoming risk adverse and in seeing unique solutions to problems. So
Excellent.
that's okay.
Excellent point, Mike. Great observations. Thank you so much. All right, shall we go to the next section?
Can
What
I
is
ask
that?
one question? Was CJ firstborn?
Yes, he was.
Okay, we're moving on to the role of ignorance.
Yes.
Okay. The role of ignorance. Bucky's virtue of mystique resonates with Stuart Feinstein's wonderful short book, Ignorance, How It Drives Science. Feinstein begins his book, knowledge is a big subject. Ignorance is bigger, and it is more interesting. Stuart Feinstein. Feinstein provides an image for understanding the relationship between our knowledge and our ignorance. Learning is like the widening ripples on the surface of a pond, the ever larger circumference in touch with more and more of what's outside the circle, the unknown. This insight suggests that knowledge and ignorance are like inside and outside. They always coexist and co-define each other. I think this observation resonates with the great Marina Warner insight that stories including fantasy, fairy tale, and myth are a kind of inquiry. I interpret Warner to mean that even fantastic assertions, such as we find in fairy tales and myths, are in fact veiled questions. We might then infer that assertions and questions imply and define each other. Ignorance as questions and inquiry and knowledge as assertions seem to be two complementary perspectives of our learning, one the inversion of the other. Exploration can be seen as the attempt to clarify the boundary between our ignorance and our knowledge. So, exploration might be the mystique feedback loop that Bucky described. Our ignorance might be seen as the system formed by our questions, our unknowns, and our unknown unknowns. The complement to our ignorance, our knowledge, is the system formed by our guesses, hypotheses, or theories that we posit as knowns or answers to our questions. In this model, our understanding would be the structure formed by the dynamic connections between our always coexisting ignorance and knowledge. Mystique may then be seen as the epistemic virtue, the tool that guides us in clarifying the structure of the connections between our ignorance and our knowledge. As we explore the dynamic boundary between our always coexisting ignorance and knowledge, we suddenly realize that the worlds of our ignorance and knowledge are, in fact, a further source of our learning. As we fill this landscape for exploration with guesses, hypotheses, theories, assumptions, or other kinds of assertions, and we fill it with questions and unknowns, we form the field of our learning. Any such landscape inhabited by questions and their possible answers becomes a new source of our learning for our learning. Could it be that our always coexisting ignorance and knowledge is another source for our learning in support of our comprehensivity, our disposition to compose ever broader and deeper understandings of our worlds and its people?
Right. Okay, comments, ignorance, knowledge, questions, answers. Any comments? Go ahead and type an exclamation mark if you'd like to make comments. We'll start with Jeannie. Jeannie, you need to unmute now.
Well, I love the landscape that he's forming here with the ignorance all around us, you know, because we really don't know much what we're doing. But he seems to think that at the edges of where our knowledge and the ignorance come together, that's where we're going to make mistakes. Is that true? I don't know, but it's a good idea. I like the idea of it. I was thinking about it's really quite linked to the inductive thinking. And I had noticed in the other video that they were at one point talking about, you know, if a doctor makes a mistake. And the doctor has all this protocol to go back on. So he's learned all this stuff ahead of time. I mean, he shouldn't really come into situations too much that he isn't familiar with what to do. But take a profession like politician. I think that's the most inductive. I mean, really, even if they had a good idea of what they wanted to do in the future, the chance of them actually implementing it and bringing it around to happen is so small. It's minuscule. You can't even really depend on it happening at all. They have to work with all these other people, but they're, you know, they have to use that inductive thinking to somehow think ahead. And how do they, I mean, it's a whole they're just facing total ignorance of what's going to happen in the future, and their best guess is still going to be way off. So I'm thinking these people who are thinking inductively, I mean, they're the ones that are going to make mistakes. And it's not your, you know, your doctor has protocol, your politician does not. And yet we're so hard on these people, you know, so critical of them, and everything they do is like criticized endlessly. So I think, you know, I see the fact that, look, we have millions of people in this country, young people who certainly have some ideas. None of them has stepped forward to try to be president instead of these two old guys. You know, it's because we criticize so badly, you know, the politicians that are there. Every time they make any little mistake, they're, you know, it's publicized and they're shamed and all this stuff. So that no young people want to go into the profession. And I think, you know, it's mystique that we're missing in trying to, you know, help these people realize that it's just going to be hard. It's something nobody's going to be able to do so easily.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeannie. Maritza next, and then I will go. Maritza, go ahead.
So, you know, I think Jeannie hits on the idea that, you know, what CJ is saying here, he's talking about he calls it a dynamic boundary between coexistent ignorance and knowledge. And I think that, you know, and this is something that I alluded to all the way when we first started this discussion, that we unfortunately live in a society that predominantly has banished from the common acceptance this concept of this coexistence and the knowledge that ignorance is always there or lurking, that it is still a piece there, even if in this exact moment you are not focusing on the ignorance aspect, that is there also. For everything you know, there are shadows and shadows, that things that you don't know, or you don't know you don't know, things that are as yet undiscovered. And we do ourselves a disservice when we forget this. And I think that the world of hypercriticism for any public mistake stems from the lack of embracing this fact that we, even as we strive ever forward, seeking increasing learning and knowledge, we strive forward with ignorance as our constant companion. And if ever we forget that and we think we somehow managed to lose that passenger, take a step back and look again. Because the moment we believe that there is no ignorance around us, I think we've lost our path. We've lost our way. And I think that that's my understanding of this section. What I hear CJ saying here.
That was great, Marissa. I want to riff on that and add some more things here. In some ways, I think ignorance is more fundamental issue than mistake, because mistake, at least you've done something about it, and you're trying to say, okay, is this good or not? At least it is in the conscious realm. But when you look at the amount of ignorance you have, like you know some things and you don't know some things, and at least, you know, there are some things you know that you don't know. So they're at least on your map. And then there is a whole bunch of things you don't know that you don't know. And that's actually huge. So it's like, you know, like circles, you know, you're kind of at the spotlight, then there is a fringe light that is there where you say, okay, I can't see it properly, but there's something there. I don't know what it is. And then there is just darkness. You don't know what is there. And also ignorance has to do with being honest with your limits of what you know, because it's very easy, and I certainly make those mistakes all the time, of just rushing in and thinking, oh, I know this, but no, I don't, you know. and uh, and and partly it is I'm like the younger child, you know, I'm okay making mistakes, even when I get hurt. So it's not a virtue that I'm proud of, but it is. But it's just, you know, I do, you know, it's like I'm not afraid of saying, okay, let me try this and let's see what happens. But at the same time, you save yourself a lot of trouble when you ask yourself, okay, what are the limits? What is it that you have no clue how it is? And if you're honest about it, but part of it is, this is again, you know, kind of goes back to the virtue of honesty, you know, of saying, okay, I really want to know the truth. And if I'm making a mistake, I will admit it. If I don't know something, I will admit it. Another way I kind of think of it is that, you know, you focus on questions more than answers. You know, you kind of run through questions. We're saying, what is it? What is it? What is it? What is it? Of various kinds. So I think the dance between questions and answers, if you are I think most of us get too satisfied with answers that we have. We say, oh, I got the answer. And then kind of the mind stops and you don't know. You think you know, but you don't know. So it allows you to, expand. All right, next up is Caleb, followed by Maritza. Caleb.
Yeah, so I wanted to, I guess, riff on what Jeannie said, as far as the criticism that, certain high-level professionals, politicians, doctors face. I think that there's some domains where where the costs are higher, and I think maybe not simply because of that, but that's certainly a big factor, regarding, the criticism that someone in one of those domains may make. For example, you go to the library and the librarian makes a mistake in bringing you the book that you were looking for. That may not, that's unlikely to disturb your life compared to a surgeon making a mistake when they're, performing heart surgery on you. The cost in the latter example is just greater, so there's less room for error. There's certain domains where the implications of any one action are so great and so far reaching that by virtue of that domain, there has to be less tolerance for mistakes in operation. And I think that last part is the caveat. So for a doctor, for a politician, it's okay to make mistakes, but you have to be professional enough to put yourself in a position to make those mistakes in a controlled environment. So for the politician, it's, engaging in the kind of discourse with either your fellow politicians or with your constituents, maybe on a smaller scale, to mitigate the risk of you making a mistake at a larger scale. Comedians do this, professional comedians do this as part of their trade, as part of their practice for a big show. They'll, do their tour, at smaller venues, and they'll try out new material there and make their mistakes with their routine there before they get on, the larger stage where they're going to have a lot more viewers, more investment has gone into that production, and a mistake there can negatively impact, the financial gain of the production, and then by consequence of that, perhaps the livelihood and future opportunities of said comedian. So I think there's some domains where it does make sense that there's less room for error and scrutiny, good or bad. It comes with the territory. But even within those domains, I still think, of course, there is a necessity for it to be okay to make mistakes. They just have to be made in a controlled environment where the implications are smaller.
Excellent point. I think this is really, really important point because, the repercussions of making a mistake on different things, like you're flying an airplane. The cost of mistake there is huge, and you have to take that into account when you're talking about mistakes. Wonderful point. Next up is Maritza.
I agree. It's a fantastic point. And I think it ties into something you were saying, Shrikant, on the idea of we we collect answers occasionally and we allow them to give us a false sense of security and stability. It's like I was saying that if we allow ourselves to think that somehow because we've collected enough answers as we're walking forward, we've managed to leave ignorance by the side of the road, that's a dangerous place. Even if we look at it as the example that Caleb just gave, if I am a pilot and I have done all the training and I have all my certifications and I've done all the simulations, it's not helpful to be in the air flying and to see something in front of me and stay the course because the book said that this was the best path to get to where I was going. all the knowledge in the world doesn't help me if I don't use it to do a course correction based on additional information. And I think that if we gather answers that are comfortable to us without allowing room for the possibility of knowledge, well, room for there being more ignorance. So, if I have 5 answers and I think that I have successfully answered this question, that's okay as long as I am open to the idea that there might be a 6th answer that will potentially provide knowledge that will enhance the existing 5 I'm holding, but it could also provide knowledge that knocks them out. And so now then I have 1 answer instead of 6. And that's a very scary um, thing to consider. It's so I am not a good billiard player, right? But I'm very good with pattern seeing, and I can see math configurations. And I told this to a couple of you. The very first time I was in front of a billiard table and I had the stick and I was so excited to play because I'd seen it. I was like, oh man, I just know exactly where you have to hit the ball and how to make it go into the pockets. And this is going to be so much fun. I was so shocked and confused that the stick was not doing my bidding. Like I could not understand why the ball was not going exactly. I could see it so perfectly in my mind. I had already solved the problem, but it was a 2-dimensional problem I had solved. I had not at all even considered it. Well, I still don't know how to play billiards. Why? Because instead of practicing in the 3D domain, I just went to a corner and licked my wounds and said, well, this game sucks. It doesn't match my brain configuration. That's not the approach I would recommend anyone to do, but it's a little bit silly example, but it's the idea of, the new knowledge I had now should have guided me towards the necessity for collecting new data, right? In a different way than I had previously collected data, because, all the math and all the, pattern seeking that I had done 2-dimensionally was not as useful as I believed it to be. So if you close yourself out, or if you remove, it somehow I had divorced myself from the very real fact that I was entirely ignorant in how to actually play. And in losing sight of that, it actually made me not only a terrible player, but also unwilling to put in the work to become a better player, because my brain told me that I should know how to do this. There's no real law. That's not actually truth, but it's the idea of it's to me, when we don't remain in position open for continuing to learn and grow and change, even when it's something that somehow is not pleasing for us to understand, it's to our detriment. It's there's always the possibility that the 5 answers you have will be wiped out by the 6th, and you'll be bumped back to having 1 piece of knowledge and not have collected the 6 that you thought you were collecting. And these are arbitrary numbers. We don't really count our answers, but I'm just saying that to put the point out there that a hindrance in our society today is that the collective society breeds a fear of losing the answers we have already amassed, and it breeds a distaste for not having any, and even for saying it. Like it is not really a socially acceptable thing to walk around telling people you don't know. And I hear in a lot of what this essay is saying to us. That as budding comprehensivists, let us strive to embrace that. If we start making it, okay, let's normalize saying, I am ignorant. I would like to not be so ignorant. And the best way to say that is, ask somebody, what's a mistake you made in this same exact thing I'm about to do? If we go seeking to learn from other people's mistakes, it's a good way to help decrease the ignorance quotient, perhaps.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Maritza. Let's go with Jeannie. Then we'll do the next reading, and that's the last one. And then we will discuss further. Jeannie, go ahead.
What Marissa brought up kind of got me thinking about how many of our mistakes are actually well-intentioned, so that our mistake might not be in our intentions towards something, but in how we get there. I think this is the kind of mistakes that parents are always complaining about. They did the wrong thing with their child, but actually, if they went back, they would probably have no better idea what to do because every circumstance is different and you just don't know. So, and I also like the idea of asking for help, because you can drive around for a long time, and if you don't ask somebody where you are, you might never find your way back to Pennsylvania. So yeah, I think asking for help, seeking out the information that you're going to need so you can avoid or correct your mistakes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jeannie. All right, Marissa, can we have the last piece?
Yes. The last piece is it's not directly about Mystique. I think it's tangentially about. So it's called a theory for learning comprehensive. Oh wait, I'm not sharing. Sorry. Oops. Try that again. Okay. A theory of learning for comprehensivity.
Go ahead.
We have begun to sketch a theory of learning for our comprehensivity. Let us recapitulate to assess our progress in thinking about how we might understand our worlds ever more extensively and ever more intensively. Our comprehensivity engages us to understand the world and its peoples. So far, we have identified 4 sources for this learning. The first source we surveyed was humanity's great traditions of inquiry and action. Then we examined Bucky Fuller's cosmic intellectual universe, which includes all humanity's communicated experiences. Next, we explored Wade Davis's concept of the ethnosphere as the full breadth and depth of our cultural zones. Finally, in this resource, we identified the always coexisting and co-defined systems of our ignorance and knowledge as a 4th source of our learning. There may be other sources for our learning, and there may be better ways to characterize them. But we hope this list of 4 sources helps practitioners of our nascent tradition begin to get a handle on our project. How would you circumscribe the sources of learning you use to inform your comprehensivity? In addition to attempting to circumscribe the sources of comprehensivist learning, we have begun the process of attempting to identify the epistemic virtues that should guide us in making sense of all these sources. In this resource, we highlighted Mystique, the value of attending to the ever more refined correcting of our mistake making. Previously, we identified the inductive attitude as the intellectual courage to be ready to revise any of our beliefs, the intellectual honesty to challenge our beliefs when our experience disputes them, and the intellectual steadfastness to resist the wanton changing of our beliefs. Finally, we identified the method of multiple working hypotheses as the discipline to consider a wide range of possible explanations before beginning our assessments. Are these three epistemic virtues a good start in providing us with tools to assess our comprehensivist learning? How might we refine this list? What else do we need to guide our judgment as we attempt to formulate comprehensive comprehensions about our worlds and its peoples?
Thank you, Marissa. So I just want to point out what CJ is doing with the book. He's taking these large pieces. He's putting these large methods on the table, and then slowly asking us to compare this with that. Say, okay, which ones do you like? Which ones work? How are they related to each other? And ultimately, it's going to end up with these the epistemic virtues, in the one of the final ones. So it's really wonderful to kind of go through it again the second time. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and ask for presentations at this point, and then we can continue the discussion after the presentations. I know Jeannie has a presentation. If anybody else has presentations, just go ahead and message, send a chat to me. But let's start with Jeannie. Jeannie, go ahead.
See if I can do it.
Sorry, is there a connection problem?
Give me a second here.
Sure.
No, I'm trying to do this. I practice, but there it is. Okay, can you see my screen?
Oh, no. Just a second. Let me go ahead and enable all participants. No, we can't see your screen. Do you want Maritza to share it for you? The document that you sent?
I thought this worked before. Oh, hold on. Let me see here. Hold on here.
You click on, there is a green button at the bottom of the screen. Say share screen. So you click on that. And
yeah, I did that part. I thought, let's see.
Yeah, you should see a bunch of windows. So choose one of the windows. The one that you want to share. Right, looks like Jeannie is having some problems. I think her video is also freezing, right? Marissa, do you have, I think I've emailed you the document.
No.
Jeannie, let Maritza share. Is that okay?
Help. Sure. Let me see here.
Yeah, okay. Maritza, if you could bring that up.
Oh, there I am.
Give me just a moment here. My computer's actually going slow as well. Give it a second. It's thinking about opening.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
I did practice.
Right.
Frozen.
Jeannie still there? Did we lose Jeannie?
Oh, Jeannie dropped off.
Oh no.
She'll come back.
Okay. She will. Yes. Okay, so I have it. I do not have a presentation. I just was gonna talk a little bit about Stuart Feinstein's book,
Sure.
if that's okay.
Oh,
So yeah, I didn't have time to make it into a presentation. CJ talks about Stuart Feinstein's book called Ignorance, How It Drives Science. What this book does is it provides a perspective on the nature of scientific inquiry. And it emphasizes the role of ignorance and not just knowledge in driving scientific progress. Wait,
hold on, Maritza. Let's see if Jeannie is ready.
Jeannie's back. Ah, yes, yes.
Let's go with
Did not
Jeannie,
catch
then we'll continue. So sorry, Maritza.
it. No worries. No worries.
And Jeannie is
It was-
moving quite a bit now. She used to be frozen, so I can probably
It's
will.
moving. So yes.
I see light.
Okay. We see life.
All
All
right,
right. There you go.
go ahead.
You can just
So I'll tell you the numbers because it moves pretty fast, okay? So this is an example of using an analogy as a model of Mystique. Number 2, here's the grass. Number 3, here's a flower came up. Its chances of seeds starting in the ground below it aren't that good because grass forms roots or rhizomes that make it hard for other plants to start. Grass is a recent inhabitant of Earth, appearing in the Cretaceous 66 million years ago. It became widespread 30 million years ago, after the dinosaurs were already gone. Number 4, here's a bee. Not of any use to the grass, as it's wind pollinated, nor is the grass food for the bee. The dandelion, though, it's low in nutrition. It can provide pollen and nectar for the bee in a pinch. Number 5, some little bugs appear, fast growing with short reproductive cycles. Number 6, a butterfly moves into the top story. Their life cycle is long with pupae and instars. It's a lot of different stages. Number 7, a beautiful flower, could be a weed, comes up even though its chance is small because of the thatch. Its chances of reproduction are small, but the bee can help as well as the flower providing more for the bee. Number 8, a predator for the little bugs comes along. Number 9, there he is. Number 10, and a predator for the predator, and pretty soon a whole biosphere. Number 11, oh no, Jeannie, you've gone too far. We can't have snakes in our front yards. 12, lawnmower. Whoops, you go back to 12. Lawnmower. 13, after the massacre, the dandelion has survived because it's made an adaptation to grow flowers on a short or long stalk. 14, and it even gets to spread its seed. Okay, now I'll go back with the analogy. So number 2, grass. This is us growing to our potential and getting to spread our seeds, which I would say are our ideas. The roots are inertia and resistance to change. Grass doesn't invite competition. Number 3, a dandelion is kind of special. It has lots of seeds, lots of good ideas. Number 4, I guess I'll call the bee luck. The dandelion can self-pollinate. I could call this a collaboration Number 5, a colony of little bugs, annoyances, but also food for thought. Part of, solving problems is how we get through our days. Number 6, butterflies, complicated, drawn out, involved plans. Many steps have to go right, but if they do, something beautiful emerges. Number 7, a community of people reaching their potential and the special people flourishing. 8, the lace wing. I would say it's a meme. Number 9, our happy community can feed those beyond our immediate space. Number 10, even to the point of nourishing the broader society. So I'm calling the bird the broader society. Number 11, can we handle it? It's scary to us. Number 12, the lawnmower is the way our society punishes mistakes, cuts down those who think differently, embarrasses us, shames us, and bullies people, especially people that are not seen as successful. 13, the dandelion survives. CJ identified it as dare to be naive. There's something innate in us that even with the repressions of the worst kind, the human spirit to grow and learn and create and participate is unstoppable. 14, so the dandelion spreads its seeds and persists. Well, that's it. Does the analogy work? And are there alternate ways to view this analogy? Thank you.
Wow. Jeannie, this is amazing. This is amazing. All you have been outdoing yourself all throughout. This is just great. I just love it. You did all these drawings? Wow. Wow. You're on mute.
It's layers. So, I have 5 blades of grass that I had to draw, but I used them over and over.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So I love it. It's just anybody else wants to comment anything? Marissa, what did you think?
It's amazing. Oh, and I enjoyed the first part, but when you moved on to the analogy, oh, amazing. Just brilliantly done. I love my absolute favorite was that it also was a shift in perspective. So you actually are showing all 3 of the potential epistemic virtues that CJ is inviting us to consider here for comprehensivity, because we had to shift the perspective from viewing the bird as a bad predator to being the greater outside universe that we're feeding. And it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. It's beautifully brilliant. And it's just amazing. That's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I also like the lawnmower part
Yes.
of saying, okay, this is something completely different, which is everything else is kind of growing like this, and they are kind of interacting with one another, and then suddenly you have got, you know, so it's
And it's inorganic, and it's something inorganic that affects everyone at the same time, suddenly, harshly. And yeah, it's great.
thank
Well,
you.
there's another message in it, in that, many people would think that not mowing the grass is a mistake. And in fact, your neighbors, if you have a dandelion in the grass, they're going to come over and say something to you. But as a society, more than likely, we are making a big mistake that we have all these lawns. It's a lot of labor, a lot of fuel used to take care of them, and they're not very biodiversive. No, is that the right word? Biodiverse. Yeah.
Yes, I resemble that reaction also to just the plain I don't understand it seems so foolish to me to have like all this land where you can do anything you want and you choose nothing.
Grass.
Wonderful.
Well, at least grass is better than cement.
There. That all fits into your analogy actually, because that's actually another layer I think we can put there because, despite the lawnmower that came, we still have the ability to grow, to regrow. So it's beautiful. I love it. It's a beautiful analogy. I think it's great.
Excellent. All right. So I have one point that I kind of held back on. So I want to bring that up. I was talking about the airplane and it's like you don't want to take the cost of mistake of an airplane pilot. And then I was thinking about, okay, so how is that being handled in history? And actually a biggest step in this is use of simulators. And if you think about it, and this is Julian Jaynes now, your mind is a simulator. Your mind is a simulator. So it is saying, what are the possible ways in which I can do things? What if I did this? And in the simulator, you can go ahead and try out different things, take feedback on which ones are working. And then when you actually implement it, you're basically using your mind, your consciousness, in order to create maps of territory. There is a territory out there. It is what it is. And you're kind of doing this map making, and you're going through navigating through maps, never forgetting that there is a territory out there and the map is map of the territory. So this idea of consciousness as simulator and the role of simulation, because simulation automatically says that, look, I'm going to try out different things and many of them I'm going to discard in order to learn how to really do something. And once I have done that, then I will put it on then I will start flying the plane after I've logged certain number of hours in this simulator. Donna.
Yeah, that reminds me that I had just read that our brains have that capacity that instead of only doing trial and error, we have that simulation ability. So that replaces having to do everything by trial and error. And of course, I love that ability to use that all the time versus hands-on trial and error too much.
Excellent point. In some ways, when you're looking at and trying to learn from other people, you're actually using a simulator. You're saying, okay, what did they do? And what happened? How did that work out for them? And you're using that as a base for your actions. So you're regarding, so that's another way of, idea of simulation. And I think that is, Julian Jaynes puts it very beautifully, because I think that is the heart of consciousness, of saying that you are trying out things and you're trying iteratively to get better at it. But it is not the world. It is, a map of the world that you're working with. And you shouldn't forget that that's your map. If you get too much attached to the map, then you think that that's the territory. You don't need to look at territory anymore. And again, to kind of be aware of what is it that you are simulating. If you're not simulating everything, you're simulating some things to know so it allows you to also think about the limits of what you're dealing with. All right. So folks, this is wonderful. We started a little late, so I want to end it a little early, so that people can go to sleep. And I think this series is going very well. I think next week we have Plato, if I mistake not. We're going through Plato. Phil is taking us through various dialogues of Plato. And let's see what else is going on. We have many different meetups going on, so please check them out, and we'll go from there. Maritza, any closing thoughts?
Oh, I was going to help you out with many things happening. Tomorrow is the first official event for meta modernism. Yes, it's on a Thursday, not Friday.
Yeah,
Oh, this is second. Well, the first was an introduction, right? Now we're having the actual.
So tomorrow it's going to be about the concept of the winning meme, of saying, okay, now you're trying to navigate through all of these ideas. Can you come up with something small which really has legs? So I've not talked to Hunter about how he's planning to deal with it. We'll just find out. But it's a very interesting topic. And
Awesome.
So it's also likely that I might need to postpone that to 9 p.m. or something like that. I'll talk to Hunter and figure that out. But that's what is going on. And then, of course, on Mondays, we have poetry. Tuesdays, we have Tao. And Wednesday, next time, it's going to be Plato. And then Thursday, I don't think we have anything. Friday, we are going to be doing Jung. So that's the plan. All right, folks. So we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.